Today on the Middle Ground, federal dollars are coming into our state, but do you really know how your tax dollars are being spent? Well, we'll discuss a bill being proposed as part of a multi-state effort that would require more disclosure of federal dollars. Plus, the countdown is on to get a budget deal settled and help the nearly $600 million budget gap. Well, we'll discuss what could be done and what could be cut to make that budget work. We'll have all that and more right here on the Middle Ground. Oklahomans need their voice in the public policy conversation. Every discussion about public policy solutions right now is Washington-centric. So the Middle Ground focuses on shifting the conversation back here to the heartland and what the people of Oklahoma think about their lives and their future. The status quo is failing. Regardless of what your beliefs are, the status quo isn't working. Well, that's a middle ground. That is the middle concept that we can all agree on. From the middle, we can come and find those solutions together that empower our people and create opportunity for all. Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to the Middle Ground. I'm your host, Michael Carnuccio, and I'm joined by Trent England, host of Middle Ground Radio, which you can hear weekday mornings from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on 1640 a.m. The Eagle. Trent, it's good to be back this week. We've been off for a few weeks. A lot going on in the country and the state.
That's right. It's been a busy week. It was a busy week for Middle Ground Radio. You got to fill in for me. I heard the first part.
And you still have a show?
Yeah,
you still have a show?
Show's still
That's
there.
Good.
So no, it's been a busy week at the legislative session, and you know we're in this period of time where they're putting the wraps on a lot of the quote unquote policy bills and moving toward the budget, and so you know some of that talk is starting to percolate out a little bit. Talk about why we're in the hole that we're in, right? It's gone from $611 million to $664 million in the estimates. Still a small piece of really overall state spending. It's important to keep that in perspective. But I think, you know, as we go forward from here, this is going to be a big issue. And you have the legislature, individual legislators starting to look at when are we going to get out of here? Mid-May, late May? Could we go late? And it all comes down to the budget.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those policy issues that, of course, you're following every day on the show and tracking and talking with citizens about. One of them that we've discussed on this show before is charter school authorization across the state and some specifics within Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Where is the charter school issue going? Well,
this legislation actually passed both chambers, and so charter schools are actually going to be expanded in the state of Oklahoma. There was some a little bit of vitriolic debate about that, I think, thrown around at the last minute. But you know, we've had charter schools in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa. And one of the things that's important to point out is this just opens the door to charter schools. It doesn't guarantee that these schools are going to be opened anywhere, but it means it's one more option. And a charter school is a public school, so it's one more option in the world of public schools to open a different kind of school now anywhere across the state of Oklahoma.
So with the discussion about charter schools, help our viewers to understand why there's so much conversation. If they are public schools, what makes a charter different than a traditional public school? What are some of the things people might notice?
Well, so there are two ways to look at it. I mean, for a parent, a charter school is another school that opens up that might that basically works like a public school, but might look a little bit more like a magnet school or even like a private school in that it has more flexibility. It can be focused differently than a regular public school from the insider perspective. And this is what I think kind of bled into the legislative debate. These are schools with less restrictive regulations. People view them as a way to experiment with different ways of doing education. I actually wrote a piece a couple weeks ago. There's a charter school closing in New York City that was created to prove that union-dominated, union-controlled education was a good idea. It turned out it was a complete failure. So, you know, from inside, the people who like education just the way it is don't like charter schools because it opens the door to more innovation and a little bit of competition in the public system.
Other policy issues that have been going on that we've covered on the show, there's what's being known as the Uber bill, but there's transportation regulation conversations from the Senate, a bill that's in the House. Where does that measure stand today?
Well, this one got hung up. So originally, it was a debate between three parties. You have Uber and Lyft, these companies that are operating in basically Oklahoma City and Tulsa. You have the taxis and limos who don't like these companies at all because it's a new innovation, and frankly, a lot of people think it's a better way to get around town. And then you had insurance companies, and a big part of this legislation is insurance, setting statewide rules for insurance for these companies. Uber, Lyft, and the insurance companies came to this grand bargain. The House passed it. It got to the Senate. There was language about not discriminating based on sexual orientation. That was pulled out in the Senate. The New York Times wrote about this. And so now, last I heard at least, there's a question about what's going to happen. Will it pass the House? Will the House send it back to the Senate? Will Oklahoma still have the opportunity to be the model for how to do this, or have we been kind of sidelined by this other debate?
And a technicality here for folks, when legislation goes between one house and the House or the Senate, between the two chambers, excuse me, if title is on and the bill passes, similarly it can move on to the governor. If there's disagreement or title comes off, it then moves into committee at some point, doesn't it? And the two chambers have to get together?
That's true. It can be dealt with through a conference committee. It can be dealt with through the other chamber just passing the same language. So leadership has some different ways to sort that out. But ultimately, each legislative chamber has to pass identical language. And so that's where we are with that bill.
MiddleGround went on the road this week. You went back toward the nation's capital and actually took up an issue that we talked on this show a few weeks ago about, and actually covered a few times. What was that all about?
Well, so I was able to go back, and this was a conference put on by a very left-leaning organization called Fair Vote. Interesting people, honest people. They are big advocates for reforming just about every part of our election system, but they don't like the Electoral College. So I went back to sort of stand up for the Electoral College, the system that the American founders designed, and had a great discussion about that and some other issues. It was really interesting, and actually, I am pleased to say that of the people who, they surveyed the audience before and after, and of the people who were undecided at the beginning, 3-1 came my direction. So I was glad to see that.
Just a little bit of time left before we have to take a break. While you were there, did you hear anything else about the 2016 rumors? Any new candidates get in your ear or anything?
The reality is, I talked with one insider about Hillary Clinton, and the Clinton machine is so powerful inside. And there's the ramifications for Democrats breaking ranks from that machine. A lot of people think she will actually just walk to the nomination.
Well, we're going to talk quite a bit about the budget, federal funds transparency. We need to take a quick break, but we know those federal dollars are coming into our state. So up next, we're going to have a state lawmaker talk to us about how those dollars are being used and why this matters to you. Stay tuned.
What is hope? You cannot see it nor hear it, and though you can't touch it, you can feel it. You feel it when your heart is full and spirit strong. You know when hope is present, and you certainly feel it when it is gone. The original meaning of hope was synonymous with trust, a promise, a confidence, even salvation. Central Oklahoma Habitat for Humanity has been providing this type of hope to our community for nearly 3 decades. And just like the homes we've built, repaired, and rebuilt, our hope gives families joy and peace, protection, strength, courage, and comfort. It gives them endurance, warmth, and confidence they so desperately needed. If you are searching for hope or wanting to provide hope for those in such a need, please contact us, Central Oklahoma Habitat for Humanity, building houses, building hope.
We have a vision of Oklahoma that in the 21st century, you and I can be living in a daily land run where freedom just seems to seep out of the ground, where free enterprise creates opportunity for everyone at all levels of society. That is the type of Oklahoma that we were founded on. That's what this state was created upon, and that's where we see our future. OCPA is founded on the philosophy that free markets, individual liberty, individual initiative, and personal responsibility are what build safe, sustainable societies. It's what empowers people. Anyone, no matter what their hopes or their dreams are, should care about the success of OCPA, because as we breed excellence, as we succeed, what we're doing is ensuring that they have every opportunity available to them at their fingertips, and that no matter how big their dream, they can achieve it, because we're going to clear that pathway for them. Joining us now in studio is Senator Greg Treat, Vice Chairman for the Appropriations and Budget Committee in the State Senate. Senator Treat, thanks so much for coming back with us today.
Thank you for having me back.
We've talked a little bit earlier in the show about this concept of federal funds transparency. Why don't you help our viewers understand what does that mean and why is it an important issue this session?
It's extremely important. We appropriate around $7 billion, last year $7.1 billion. But we actually spend as a state almost twice that, really twice that and some change, through some fees and some federal funds. And as state legislators and as my constituents, some of these agencies go out and get those funds, and we have very little knowledge of what they're doing with that money as it currently stands.
So people think that, you know, whatever our state spends, you're a legislator. I mean, you're in leadership, right? So you must have your hands in all of this. But what you're saying is that's not actually really true. I mean, you have unelected people in the state bureaucracy who make some of these decisions about taking federal funds.
Absolutely, and then they commit the state to certain parameters saying, we're going to let the federal government pay 90% this year, but we're eventually going to ramp up where the state's paying for 90% of that, and the legislature never sees it, never has approval over it. And so we're just trying to get some transparency around that and make sure that the taxpayers know where their money's going.
So the specific piece of legislation in question this year, I believe, is House Bill 1748. What is the specific language, and if passed, signed by the governor, what would this mean for governing moving forward?
I amended it and passed it off the floor this week. So it is going back to Representative Newell to hopefully accept Senate amendments. It was sent over. We did have a legislator from Stillwater point out that there were some monies that required security clearance to see those monies. So we amended to make sure we took care of the national security type issues. The vast majority has nothing to do with national security. So it's going to go back to Representative Newell. I have an indication that the House will accept amendments and go to the governor's desk within the next week and a half or so.
We've seen recent polling. I think Sooner Poll came out with a poll that shows that about nearly 9-1 Oklahomans support this idea. And we know Dr. Coburn, when he was in the Senate, talked about this quite a bit and saw favoritism. Do you hear quite a bit from constituents? I mean, are these challenges, concerns people have about what's going on in government?
They're absolutely concerned about the sovereignty of the state of Oklahoma. The federal government was created by the state government, not the other way around. But so often we allow the federal government to dictate our policy through money. So in order to chase money, we have completely abandoned some principles. In order to try to go get money, we've spent money that we wouldn't have otherwise spent, and it's caused us to bloat our budget in pursuit of federal dollars to grow our budget. And so I think my constituents and constituents all across the state of Oklahoma are very concerned about this. I'm surprised it was 9-1. I didn't even know that until you just told me. So,
well, and I mean, this seems like an issue that, I mean, just helps us have a better conversation, right, about these federal funds. I know I've seen the attack on Oklahoma that we're a welfare state because we take all these federal dollars. And I mean, part of the point of this, I think, is just to show those dollars they're not really free, right?
They're not free at all. And I've likened it, and some people will cringe when I say it, but the federal government spends like a drunk uncle, and we are the nephew or niece accepting that money, and we have a moral obligation to say, you're bankrupting yourself. It's our money we're sending to you in the first place, but you're bankrupting yourself. If we continue to accept it, I think we're as guilty as the Congress in overspending on the federal side and spending us into oblivion.
One of the things I've been curious about, and I don't know if this has come up in debate, but Oklahoma has a balanced budget requirement, right? So taking these federal funds that are borrowed I mean, it seems like an end run. I mean, does that ever come up when these federal funds come into the state?
That hasn't come up because there hasn't been transparency on those federal dollars. In fact, I've got some pushback from some of the state agencies saying, if Oklahomans know what we're accepting that money and the conditions of that money, it'll be much harder for us to accept, which I find interesting and even underscores more why we need to do this.
So one of the criticisms has been that, well, these are our tax dollars in the first place. And you hear this in several areas, but here recently, we're being taxed by the federal government. Now they're sending money back to our state for us to operate state government. So I'm sure you heard that challenge as you heard your bill on the floor. What are your thoughts with respect to that?
They are our dollars. That's the reason we need to know where they're going and what is demanded when we accept those monies. I think Oklahomans, when they hear us talk, they think the amount we appropriate is the totality of the state budget. We need to let them see just how expensive state government really is. We need to show them how much fees are. We need to show them how much federal money comes into the system and how much state money, so they can get a real picture of what it costs to run state government in Oklahoma. If we don't have that, we'll never have a true limiting of the size and scope of state government in our lives.
We're going to talk about the state budget here coming up after a break in a few minutes, but you brought up something there that I think ties within this question. You mentioned that the state is appropriating almost $7.5 billion or had, but total state spending is much more than that, almost a little over $17 billion. And we hear that total state spending keeps increasing, but then we hear conversations about the state is appropriating less to this or less to this. Is that where you're saying this difference is? Help our viewers understand why they're hearing mixed messages.
Some of it is through apportionment as well, because previous legislators created what are called apportionments, or you might hear them called off the top.
Off the top, yeah.
A lot of those go to education, roads, various programs across state government. But when tax collections come in, those go off the top before we ever get a chance, and they're not in the certified revenue that the legislature has to spend.
Okay.
Other parts are these federal dollars we're talking about. One agency in particular is very aggressive about expanding their scope by going out and seeking these grants, obligating the state, and then if we as the state legislature don't pick up the tab when the federal government ratchets down their spending, they go out to their constituents and say, look how bad the state legislature is. They're about to destroy this program that you've become dependent on. I want to get control on the front end.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute, but folks, we need to take a quick break. However, when we return, some are calling it a budget gap, but the lieutenant governor called it an opportunity. What can Oklahomans expect to see coming out of the budget deal? We'll be right back.
A well's output is only as strong as landing the production stream. In extreme conditions, call for extreme durability. At Syntec, our engineers understand what matters. That's why we craft centralizers differently than anyone else in the industry. Laser cut from a single piece of special steel alloy and featuring an innovative heat-treated stop collar. Syntec centralizers create optimum standoff and flexibility for enhanced cementation in any conditions. It's simply smarter. No welding, no weak points. That means minimum torque, greater strength, and superior drag reduction. From lateral shale operations on land to ultra-deep water, you only have to buy it once. No fishing, no failures, no BS. Our best-in-class centralizers outperform the competition on any rig and any challenge. And we've got customizable simulations to prove it. We know that downtime isn't an option, and we take pride in providing our customers a world-class product with world-class service and support, made in the USA. Others still try to imitate it, but none can replicate it, not even close. There's only one centralizer this strong, Syntec Centralizers, an international symbol of quality.
They didn't see that she was normal but different. They just seen her with a disability.
The foundation of it is to provide a choice to those parents who know best for their children of what would be the best educational environment for them.
They are way behind at the start of the race. This is just helping them catch up a little bit.
They saw our children and how well they're doing, that they'd understand why this is important.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking today with Senator Greg Treat, Vice Chair of Appropriations and Budget in the State Senate. And Senator Treat, we're hearing quite a bit about this budget gap, or what the Lieutenant Governor referred to as an opportunity. And we hear the numbers $611 million, I think specifically could be larger. Help set up this conversation for us and for our viewers at home. What does that mean? Why are we hearing a shortfall or gap?
We have 664, but 611 is what was certified in February, less to appropriate than we had the previous year. Part of that is because we spent one-time monies last year hoping that the economy would improve. and hoping that those funds would replenish. That created a little over $200 million of that shortfall. So the Senate has taken the position, as well as many in state government, that we cannot rely on one-time funding sources to fund ongoing expenses. $611 million, some people try to point toward the tax cut and say, it was the tax cut. It's you Republicans who keep wanting to cut taxes, you created this hole. But if you look, our income tax collections are at an all-time high. The problem is we're going to have less income tax payers because of oil and gas prices. And we are seeing layoff after layoff after layoff. And when you look at the economy of this, or you talk to economics professionals, they will always tell you that in Oklahoma you count every energy sector job as 2 regular jobs. So when we're seeing these layoffs in the oil and gas field, and we're seeing international pressure on that we have no control over, that's really what's driving the projected decrease in the budget going forward as well. We're talking to the Tax Commission on a regular basis, trying to figure where we're at and where our revenues are coming in. It just doesn't look very good right now. But it has nothing to do with our prudent measures to cut taxes and allow growth and allow people to use their own money.
So looking ahead, I mean, the legislative session theoretically has about a little over a month, I guess, to go. What's the process look like? And I mean, what should viewers expect to see? Are there opportunities for them to weigh in?
There are opportunities to always call your legislator and say, what are your priorities? Because everyone who is running this program that you and I may see as waste, there's some constituency that thinks it's the best thing ever. So we're hearing from them. But we're not hearing from people saying, hey, I don't want to spend any more money. Let's rein this in. Very few people will actually call and say, hey, government's wasting money. But they will call and say, we need more money to this, we need more money to that. When I went after OETA's budget last year, of trying to say, is that a true core function of government? Should they be in the TV business? Should they be in the news business? Should we have a government-run news source? Constituencies came out of the woodwork saying, we have to have it, it's our lifeblood. So it becomes very difficult to pass something like that in the process. The process, how it works, I'm the vice chair, the chairman is Senator Jolly from Edmond. On the House side, there's Chairman Sears and Vice Chairman Casey. We meet with representatives of the governor's office twice a week, every week. We started off once a week in the first week of session. And we bring the position of our caucus to the table and try to work out the disagreements that we have and try to come to some shared philosophy moving forward.
A lot of folks outside of the process would say, well, since 2010, the Republicans have been in the majority. And so everyone around that table is of the same party and the same philosophy, so this should be pretty easy. And yet the budget process is never easy. What are the dynamics there? Why is that? Is it just because you have large caucuses with different interests? Or?
Have you ever sat down at a table with your wife to go over your budget? Right. Just imagine representing 3.5 million people and trying to sit down with people who some want to make sure that we do everything we can for education, no matter if we get reforms or not. Some want to make sure that we fund roads at a higher rate. So everyone has different priorities coming to that table. And we're not just representing the priorities of Greg Treat and Clark Jolly and Earl Sears and Dennis Casey. We're representing our caucuses in those meetings, and our caucuses are representative of the people. So as varied as the constituents are, as varied as the perspectives are.
Another process question dealing with budget versus policy discussion. As we're getting into the budget, there's been a couple policies that have come up that, if changed, would create savings. Employee health insurance for state employees has been an issue we've talked about on this show before, and you've been involved in. Is that a piece of this puzzle?
It's a piece of the puzzle. I was proud to be a part of an issue this year that is projected to save $8 million for state employees to not have to pay co-pays or deductibles if they go to a hospital or a surgery center that provides an all-inclusive cost to health choice. Your colleagues were helpful on that, so thank you on that measure. But it's projected to save $8 million. I think we can still find some more savings in health choice, which is our self-insured plan in the state of Oklahoma, and I continue to work on that.
So, I mean, people talk about core functions of government, and oftentimes the debate on the budget, there at least are certain groups that like to talk about, everything's a core function. Are there things that government does that aren't at the core?
Oh, there absolutely are. I've been fighting one for 4 years called the Indian Cultural Center and Museum in Oklahoma City. And I believe that's going to be a very important project. I think it's going to be a crown jewel of the river, but I think Oklahoma taxpayers have put enough money in it. We put $67 million of state dollars into it, along with federal dollars. That's $91 million of taxpayer dollars. I don't see how a museum, when we're $611 million down in a budget, could ever be argued that it's a core function. Even if we were flush with cash, I wouldn't argue that it's a core function of government. Others think it is, and there's area to disagree. But we are spending money on things that the private sector could do, or it doesn't even need to be done. Many of the things that people see me saying aren't core functions of government, they get offended. I'm not saying they're not valuable. I'm not saying they shouldn't be done. I'm just saying the taxpayer shouldn't foot the bill.
Well, Senator Treat, thank you so much for your time here today, and thank you for your leadership. Good luck with the budget process moving forward.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with some final thoughts after this.
Yeah, the Liberty Foundation's job is to essentially shape the debate in states, and we do that by going into the states and making sure that we talk with local groups about how to talk about the jobs issue, how to frame the debate on the jobs issue, so that way it's connecting with American citizens in a way that is pro-free market.
And we can really lead on these issues to try to marry the needs of business, who need talent if they're going to keep the jobs in America, with the needs of the individual who needs those skills if they want to elevate their ability to earn and live their version of the American dream.
So a competitive federalism and a really understanding how competition is healthy for the people in creating liberty and freedom for everyone. I think that in a macro sense is our greatest challenge going forward.
I faced numerous challenges. Me and both of my children were homeless.
Positive Tomorrows is Oklahoma's only elementary school serving homeless children, and we serve students that are in grades kindergarten through 5th grade.
We're a temporary solution to help families who are going through difficult times.
Give parents in poverty the opportunity to send their child to a different school other than their neighborhood public school by giving them a savings account that would allow them to make some choices based on what their child needs.
There's so much potential in our school, and the ESA laws would completely just allow us to tap into that potential.
And that's all we want for our kids, is to know that there's something beyond this. They're not their situation.
Well, folks, that's all the time we're going to have for today. Trent, before we wrap up, real quick, coming up this week on the show, what can folks expect? What's happening during session?
Well, we're going to give people some examples of areas of state spending. We just got one from Senator Treat that are not core functions of government. We're going to prove that there are things that can be cut in the budget this year to save money for Oklahoma taxpayers. We are also going to be revealing the schedule of some upcoming First Principles classes if people want to learn about the Constitution. So a lot of exciting things coming up on MiddleGround Radio.
And folks can catch MiddleGround Radio 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Weekdays, 1640 a.m. The Eagle.
That's right, every weekday morning, 7 to 9 a.m. on 1640 The Eagle.
And anything else, any other final thoughts for this week?
Well, I think that the conversation we just had with Senator Treat that's what the legislature is going to be focused on. Hopefully it's what their constituents are focused on as well.
Folks, tune in next Sunday. We're going to talk quite a bit about health care on the Middle Ground. Until then, join us on MiddleGround Radio, again, weekdays 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Other than that, make it a great week, work hard, and have fun, Oklahoma.